Greetings viewers and welcome to my channel. This is our 10th session, which is a continuation and conclusion of our last session. We continue to have in this session our distinguished guest, Reverend Dr. John Krysko. For your convenience, links to the previous sessions appear in the description of this video. Now let's start with the new session.
Two things I want to say about we know the story of Moses. I mean, it's written or understood slightly different in our three cultures, three religions, but the understanding is the same, and God does the work. However, there's in the Jewish tradition, it's called a midrash. They have these rabbis very early on. They had this tradition that arose that there was a man named Nashon, Nashon.
Okay.
He's listed in the Old Testament. Now, he was a man of great faith, and while everybody was waiting at the waters, he went into the waters, up to his chin before the waters parted. And then the waters parted. The rabbis in Midrash said he played an important part, that without him, the waters would not have parted. Now, God was God. God was the agent, was the agency. Moses was the prophet, the messenger. But without a human, more human type of person with that faith, it would not have been accomplished. And I ascribe to that. Nashon's son, Solomon, or a version of Solomon, ended up marrying.
What's that audio?
Ended up marrying this woman in Jericho named Rahab, who was she come in, open up the gates, and actually ended up having Jericho fall down, and she was essential in this march to the promised land. She became part of the Hebrew tribe, and through her line and this national, that line comes right down to David. The important portion of all this is the power of the feminine in terms of all that, but critically was a human being who acted out of faith without evidence. So that means that each of us, we're not Moses. All those who are Moses, raise their hand. Those who think that it might be possible to go into the waters of uncertainty with the faith of God, at least a little bit, knowing that God can part those waters. Only God can do that. I'm raising my hand. I have faith that entering, even though I don't know, I am not gonna part the waters. But if I, in faith, go into the waters of uncertainty and believe to the core of my soul that if God wants those waters to part, he will. I enter into those waters of uncertainty. I don't know the outcome. I am not the agency, but I can in faith enter into the troubles and say, if anything will happen, God will do it. So that to me is a very, very important point, because we have power. It means that this next week, a week from today, I am going to be knee deep. I will be absolutely up to my chin. I hope the waters part. I hate to drown because I still have grandchildren to attend to. But next week at this time, I will be at a interfaith conversation with only Jews and Christians having to do with the issues over there, because of the tremendous challenges. And also scheduling. No Muslim is going to go there. And I know the loving Jewish people that are there, and I believe, I mean, their actions or their words have said that, yes, it's bad what's happening in Gaza, but they have to protect Israel. I was shocked at that. And I'm going into these waters with my eyes open and saying it's quite possible that my Jewish brothers and sisters will not open their hearts to the absolute wrong that's happening in Israel. None of them are Israelis, but yet they're defending it at some level because it's bad. But what about the hostages? And what about the 1,200, 1,300 people? I am going to go in there not as a prophet, Perhaps, maybe, who knows? But I'm going to go into those waters and bear witness and say, this can't be. And I'm going to be in somebody else's home, and I have no idea what's going to be spoken through my mouth, but I have to show up. And if there's resistance, I will. If the floodgates need to open up, I'm not going to say, "Hey, that wasn't me." It is me because my heart is so pained. But if the truth can't be spoken and heard, at least it will not be because I didn't share what is in my. I don't know. God may say, "Shut up." I will listen as best as I can. But if I feel inside that something needs to be said, I will say it. And I have had hopefully enough trust and love from the group. I have no idea how they'll respond. I honestly do not know. I have no idea how the Christians in the group will respond to my speaking truth to this. But if I can't speak a little bit of, I'll speak as much truth as is given me to share. But if I can't do that with my fellow group in an interfaith group that I've worked with for 11 years, then I am absolutely not qualified to say I will speak truth to power. If I can't do that within a group that I consider colleagues, then in Judgment Day, what did you do? Well, I thought about it, but it didn't feel really comfortable. I decided to wait until Moses opened the water. He said, well, you had an opportunity here. Well, I didn't think I could do it. Who am I? He said, you are also a son of God. One last thing, and this is important about the mountain to me.
Okay.
There was in both the Genesis Exodus story and in the Christian New Testament, there are two parallel stories. One of them, basically Joshua's people come back and said, Moses, they're preaching in Yahweh's name in the desert. They're not out of our group. What do we do? Hand on sword. What do we do? They were pretty, if they're not a group, they'll, whatever. And Moses said, stop, put the swords away. Would that every child of Israel were a prophet. And then Joshua, okay, chill it. Now, later on, it's not Joshua, it's now Yeshua, it's Jesus, has two of his disciples said, Jesus, they're out in the desert. They're preaching in our name. What do we do? Do we go out? And Jesus said, same words, would that every son of Israel were a prophet. So the greatest of some of the greatest, I don't know what Muhammad said in this account, but two of the branches of the Abrahamic tree said, it's important that we do the very best that we can, even to the level of to a prophet. Go to the mountain, go to, do the very highest that you can. Put it all in front of God. Don't just give it to the prophets, to the teachers. Take personal responsibility at the deepest level that you're given. Go to the mountain. So, Martin Luther King, in his own way, I've been to the mountain. I may not make it, but each of us is given an opportunity to do that. I can't complain about democracy for those that represent us if I don't take fullest spiritual personal responsibility in my actions. And that means to me, and I've done that recently a lot, I have been to the mountain and I've had my teacher guide me, and I have to speak from that place. If I say, well, I can't do that. Who am I? Yes. Who am I? I am Alim. I am Khusro. I am all people. I am no better or worse. If the divine allows me to do that, who am I to say no in advance? So each of us has to rise to the highest part, whatever mountain.
We have tried to minimize this to below 45 minutes, John, but you had so many good points, we didn't want to interrupt you. But one last question, and I think we have to sort of wind up because the viewers don't have the stamina to listen to too much, I think. And you made very good points about each one of us has to be a prophet, or aspire to be a prophet. And this is the goal of these sessions, is to teach these things at colleges and universities and appeal to the younger generation to give value to morality, to ethics, to God. Now, one last question of you is, to what extent is there racism? And I'm asking you because as a white person, uh,
I'm
you,
white?
well,
Right person, right
as
person.
compared to us. So when you, I mean, we didn't intend to talk about Gaza, but that's all right. That's happening, and it's a tragedy that is unfolding before our eyes. But when one Australian and three British people were killed, they were given, it seemed to us, I don't know, that they woke up Biden and he got very upset. And the Australians got very upset and they said, oh, we're not going to send you any armaments anymore. Uh, so it gave us a sense that there is an element of racism which is at play over here. And it so happens that the powerful are all white.
I think it goes back. I mean, when you look at the colonialist background of from the 17th through the early 20th century, absolutely racism comes into it. I mean, the Churchills and all the others, you know, absolutely enters into it, and it's more than just other. I mean, it's it's an identification. It's when you identify with a skin color or whatever it is that you identify with anybody else that has something different, then you're going to react to it. And then what makes it racism is all the unresolved hatreds. And when you're separated from God, the greatest punishment any of us could ever have is exile from God. The Greeks, the worst thing you could do to a Greek wasn't kill him, really, to exile you from the community. The greatest punishment from God is to be absent from the heart and mind and face of God. So when we do that, we build up a tremendous amount of frustration, hatred. And when we identify with this, we project all of our ugliness onto other. We don't deal with the ugliness, other brown, there is no ugliness in another's face and stuff. The ugliness is inside of our souls, in our minds, in our hearts. And that's what we project onto other people. And, it's, the, in the, when you come to the United States back in the 100 years ago, and you didn't have the proper documentation, Italian people, they would be filed, it would be called W period O period P, without without papers. That's all, okay, they signed in without papers. What came to be, they were called, and this, I use this word most delicately, Italian people were called, it's so hard to voice this word, and please excuse me, WAP. It's, it's like all these words that people in the United States call a WAP is a terribly derogative term for an Italian, but all it means is without papers. But all the hatred and fear that that white people that in the elite had, they projected onto them, and WAP didn't mean an acronym. It became this horrible word. Jewish people were called, again, it's hard for me to articulate it. We're called kikes. I don't know if you've ever heard that word.
Yeah, I have.
And the Jewish people didn't want to, when they didn't have the papers, they couldn't sign the name. They didn't want to put an X because it reminded them of the cross. They would put a circle instead of the cross on their papers. And the Hebrew, or really the Yiddish word for that, is keikel. And so the Jewish people would put their keikel on that, and they were called kikes. But it's such an awful word. I throw up about it because all the hatred in their souls get projected out, and but they can't see their own hatred, but they project onto others their absolutely devastating own inner self-hatred. But it's such a deep self-hatred, they can't afford to look at it. They haven't found enough love in their hearts to deal with their own self-hatred. and they project it outward, and then they act on that self-hatred, which of course increases that cycle of self-hatred. There is so much self-hatred in the world. It's only God can heal that. Human cannot. It's like it's an impossible amount of self-hatred. We can help. We can love our neighbors, but it's not enough. We need the divine love, because it's going to take more than just loving your neighbor, because the amount of self-loathing is so extreme on people that express racist views that it starts to, there is one last thing, and I'll be shut up for the last. There is a documentary that I'd like you to watch if you can. It's called Stranger at the Gate. It's about a half hour, done by Malala. She got the Peace Prize in Afghanistan. She was shot, and she produced a documentary about a Marine, United States Marine, who was kind of retired and came back to Muncie, Indiana, and there were Muslims in his girls' class, and he couldn't handle it. He just fought them he thought he was killing them for a good purpose. Now they're in my daughter's class, his stepdaughter's class, and he constructed this plan to kill 200 Muslims at a bomb in a mosque. And he went there to case it out. And what the Muslims did, they greeted him. They recognized he was a little off, but instead of like, whoa, they actually invited him in. And then he came again and they invited him in. Unbelievable. He ended up being transformed. He ended up becoming a Muslim and president of that organization. And he had the equipment to blow them up. So I'm not saying that's going to happen all the time, and I'm not recommending it. And I don't know how, I don't know where but the loving people, but he found in the Muslim tradition, the morality, the ethics, the lovingness that he was seeking his whole life, that because he wasn't living that and didn't find it, he was going to go out and take that hatred out on others. And he found in the most unlikely place of all, what he considered his enemy, the love, morality, ethics, and spirituality. It's a great story, a true story. So he went, with the help of, so going to the mountain, you don't go to it alone.
Or two others.
I think what you have said, John, one of the things I've noticed is there's a lot of hope. And this is very good to hear, because my message is very stark, and I'm raising the alarm bell and saying we have a serious problem. But it's not just hope. You have plans. Alim, before we wind up, is there anything that you wanted to contribute or that you wanted to ask?
No, that's fine. I think that was a very interesting discussion, and nothing particular in my mind. And that was a wonderful, session for me.
Right. So I have just introduced the idea of having guests, so that it is not just my point of view. And I didn't know that John and I were more on the same wavelength as we are. He could easily have disagreed with me. And other people have sort of said, look at all the good things that are happening. Why are you focusing on the bad things? So that could have been.
Let me finish with this. You're asking. Every day, every night I go to bed, every time during my prayers during the day. I don't do it fine, but I pray often. But I cannot help genetically but feel the pain of people suffering. It's just, gift is not quite the right word, but it's always with me, always. It's been so since I was 9 or 10. And when I was 9 and 10 and feeling what was happening in the Congo and the killings and stuff, I was distraught. And finally, in a class, I was taken out of my body, literally. I didn't, drugs. I'm a 10 years old kid. And I'm looking at the back of my head. I'm taking it up to the sky, and I saw that this great angel comes along and said, there is just balance. You don't see this now, but someday you will know there is just balance.
Right.
And so I went, then I've kept, but I always had that. And so for me, at this, some 60 some years later, what I have to do and what I believe it's possible that one can hold the pain and suffering and feeling level, but without it, we're not human. If we don't feel compassion, if we can't feel the suffering, whether it's in Sudan, Ukraine, Gaza, wherever the suffering, if we can't feel that, we're no longer human. But if we could allow ourselves to feel that and hold that feeling while at the same time asking God, what can I do to help, little or small? I will not give up the compassion of the feeling of suffering, but I will engage my mind in what you're giving me to do. Help me find balance, that I may help others find balance. Because without balance, then despair, it's just an impossible thing, because it's overwhelming on the feeling level if we don't have hope and faith to balance it out. So without hope and faith, I am nothing. Nothing as a soul. But without compassion, I am not human. So I believe it is possible to do that. I know that it is possible. It's it's hard.
John, it's not a question of, I do understand what you're saying. You feel the suffering, but do you understand that we have caused the suffering? Those people who have caused the suffering, do they recognize that they are responsible for the suffering? This is what is missing. Everybody, anyway.
Well, I'm going to make one slight differentiation with language here. There's a different. I use the word responsible with being responsive. I, in my genetic background with the Irish and the Ukrainian, have had nothing to do with killing Jews or anything to do with this or slavery. But I am in this world as a human being, equal, flawed, like everyone else. I can't take on the responsibility. Only God can have the responsibility to heal this. I can't, it's too big for me. And I'm not causally related, but I am involved every day with my economy, with the choices that I make about rich and poor. I have the opportunity with choices every day, the prayers, the people I meet, to make a difference. I can be responsive, but the responsible thing is it's over my pay grade. Only God can be responsible, and only God can heal. But I can be responsive at every moment of my every prayer, every breath I take. I am responsive to that, and I feel it most intensely.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you, Alim.
Yeah, actually, let me take the opportunity to thank Mr. Krysko.
It's a privilege, and I look forward to seeing all of them. I haven't seen all of them, but I will by this time next week. I am past my obligations of family and Easter and taxes, and I will do something less taxing, more joyful, and I hope learn.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Khusro Saab, so what is your conclusion?
Alim, we have just heard from my friend, John Krysko, and I'm grateful for him to give us his time. John is a devout Christian, and so he has given the view with his Christian background, and it's all very valuable. My message is not, as I explained earlier, from a religious context. So, because I want the message to be of all of humanity, whether they are Hindus or Buddhists or Christians or Jews or Muslims or atheists even. This is a message for all of humanity. And therefore, neither should whatever John has said be considered irrelevant because he's a devout Christian. I'm also a devout Muslim, but this is for anybody who cares for human beings. And I don't want to take up a lot of time. I just want to say that it seems that humanity is destined to play out the ritual of the powerful versus the powerless. We have seen it in all of history, and we are witnessing it today. Now, the difference is that, and it's not just the powerful against the powerless, it is the oppressor against the oppressed. So let us not be in any doubt that there is oppression involved over here. And the only thing is that the oppressor or the powerful doesn't know it. This is a ritual, and this is being played out, I don't know, for the 100th time before our eyes. And what have we got to do? Our only decision is, whose side are we on? Who do we stand with? And that we have to, because the oppressor or the powerful are numerically in the minority, but they have all the guns, they have all the aeroplanes. We have now what President Eisenhower warned us about, the military-industrial complex. We see that in action. That has happened. It's unstoppable. And once this goes away, another set of group. So humanity is on trial. But again, I repeat, this message is for everyone who believes that we have been created, that we have been created with a purpose, and that it is our job to find true meaning in life. How are we going to do it? I would like to talk about it in future sessions. But at the moment, all I want to say is we have a problem. I'd like to end on that note. And I'd like to receive as many questions or comments or thoughts from anybody who's interested. So welcome.
So viewers, we come to the end of this session of the series. I hope you liked it. If so, please like and share this video as much as possible. Please also subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you keep updated with the future uploads. I will encourage and appreciate your questions and comments on this video. Please write them in the comments box. You may also send your comments and questions by email. The email address is askkelly@alimakhtar.com. All this information is also mentioned in the description of this video. Till next time, have a wonderful and thoughtful time. Thank you.